Welcome to another edition of Media Rants. Millions of Americans, especially in the Midwest, don't recognize their state anymore. Used to be a place that was forward-looking, compassionate, and now many of our states have been going backward for quite a while. I know I've experienced that in Wisconsin, and today's guest, who I'm honored to have, has been dealing with this in Missouri, and her name is Jess Piper. She's the executive director of Blue Missouri, an organization that tries to make sure that candidates are running in every district, and it tries to give them resources to do that. She's also the author of one of my favorite Substacks out there. It's called The View from Rural Missouri. And it's just got so much insight about what progressives need to do, not just to stop the Republicans from doing bad things, but to actually get into positions of power and make real change. Jess, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Tony, thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here today.
That's really great. Let's talk about you first. Where are you from? I know that you became a teacher and got very politically active around 2016, but tell your story. How did you come to found or become involved with Blue Missouri and then start the View from Rural Missouri Substack?
I'm originally from Arkansas, but I've been in Missouri for almost 2 decades now. And I was a teacher for 16 years, taught American Lit, never wanted to do anything different. But then in 2018, Missouri passed an abortion ban with no exemptions, for rape, incest, life of the mother, nothing. And I was just enraged. But Missouri is one of 4 states where you cannot be a teacher and also run for office, which is pretty convenient, keeping 66,000 well qualified, mostly women, out of the political process. So I didn't run, even though I was enraged. But in 2020, I went to vote for Joe Biden, and there were no down ballot Democrats on my ballot, and I that was it for me because you know as well as I do, people will look at places where I'm from and they'll say you get what you vote for, and I'm like. I've got no one to vote for. That's funny. So in 2020, I decided to run for office, and I ran in 2022, got my butt kicked. I live in a town of 480 people, and our House district hasn't elected a Democrat in 32 years. We've never elected a woman. So I knew what I was up against. But
Sure.
the point of the matter was we have to give people a choice. We have to run in rural spaces. And you know as well as I do that Democrats have kind of pulled out of rural spaces over the decades and thought, well, we can win elections focusing on the city and the suburbs. And it's not working out.
It's not working. Yeah, you call yourself a dirt road Democrat, and I absolutely love that phrase. And one thing I've heard you say, and I've read it in your work, is that every community is worth it.
Yeah.
Why, in your judgment, have Democrats lost that principle that every community is worth it?
Because we pulled out, and we've done something even more even worse than that. We've pulled out of rural communities because we thought, well, there's just not enough people in these communities, to mathematically win elections. But Missouri's 33% rural. It's almost impossible to win a statewide election, leaving 33%, a third of the population behind. But also, we've done this. We are not in rural communities. We don't have people on the ground. We don't have people knocking doors and talking to my neighbors. And then every 4 years, we satellite some college students into communities like mine to knock doors. And for 4 weeks, they'll knock doors. And then my community won't vote for the Democrat. And Democrats will turn around and say, well, they're just a bunch of racists. Obviously, they're not voting for our candidates. And it's like, friend, you're not here in our communities. You come in for 4 weeks every 4 years and then act appalled that people aren't, voting for the candidate. You're gone. You're not here. You're not contributing. You're not giving my neighbors a democratic message. What do you want?
Well, you've talked to more rural voters than probably anyone in the entire region. And I know that the mass media gives us this caricature of the rural voter. What is or who is the rural voter for you? It's not as simplistic as the mass media would have us believe, is it?
It's not. And what I found, which was confusing to me until I started talking to people, on the coast, people who regularly participate in Democratic politics, is that they think we're all farmers.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, we're not all farmers. You know what? In my community, which is an agricultural community, only 12% of my neighbors are farmers. 12%. So when people, I'll say, what sort of priorities are you taking into rural spaces to talk to voters? And they'll hand me an ag policy. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Soybean policies, which by the way are terrible right now,
Yeah.
don't have anything to do with my neighbor across the street that didn't have access to health care or a sidewalk or a funded school or a library. Are you kidding me? Rural people need the same thing that everybody does, and all they give us is ag policy. And it's just pure insanity. And I don't know how many times I have begged folks to say, bring in policies that talk about bringing jobs to our communities. I mean, my town is 480 people, but it used to be 1,000, and before that it was 1,500, and before that it was 2,000. My kids are not coming home because there are no jobs here, because our schools are 4 days a week, because you can't scoop the snow off the roads because it's all chip and seal. They don't even pave it anymore. So if people don't understand, they should come out to my community. And people say, well, they're angry out there. You come out here. You look at what has happened to my town and tell me how someone could not be angry. Now, I will say they are misplacing their anger on the wrong people, but
Yeah.
people are angry for a reason.
You know, you you wrote a column in your Substack last year that it almost brought me to tears because I could identify with what you're saying. It was about your dad,
Mhm.
and I think it was called "Daddy, He Made Me Who I Am, and Then Forgot Who He Was."
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see people like your dad as you go out campaigning and canvassing your state. Can you talk a little bit about that column and what happened to your late dad, rest in peace, who apparently became, he taught you to be kind of like a Harry Truman, give him hell, and you loved him more than any man, and then you watched him become what we call MAGA now. What happened?
Yeah, the title is Daddy Died a MAGA, and it was just heartbreaking to me because he was the man that I looked up to my entire life. In 2015, he started turning into someone I didn't recognize, and then, he died in 2018 before he saw Biden or the reelection of Trump. But it was so sad. To see that my dad was willingly voting for a man who said that he grabbed women, you know,
Yeah,
um, who he knew was a bad person, who he knew was a racist, because he just was able to recognize the anger, and that anger was palpable to him, and he voted for the person who he thought saw the anger and felt the anger and could help with that. But that story resonates with so many people because so many people I know have lost their family members, their friends. It's just it's unbearable what has happened. My family, I still have family members that are MAGA. I have not been back to my home in Arkansas since 2016. I'm not allowed back in my home because my stepdad, because I voted for Hillary Clinton. And that's how far back reaching this is. And this is a man on disability, a man who is living paycheck to paycheck and who identifies with Donald Trump. And I just it's hard for us to wrap our head around. But the good thing I will say is I'm seeing people peel off left and right.
yeah,
I'm
me
seeing
too.
people, yeah, the cult is, I mean, the Kool-Aid is getting, less strong every single day. And I wish I could say it was Epstein that did it. I wish I could say it was racism that did it, but actually what I'm seeing is gas prices, which is, a sad comment, but we are seeing it, you're seeing it.
Well, let me ask you this. For people like your late dad or your stepdad, are they voters that are reachable so that when you, as a blue Missouri person, go and canvass the state, what would be the message from Democrats that might resonate with these folks and get them back? Is it as simple as economics or is it something else?
So I will say, as far as MAGA goes, I mean, the true believers, they are unreachable. If I see a MAGA flag flying, I skip that house because
Yeah,
beat your head against the wall, right? You're going to have the same impact. But I will say that folks who voted for him but aren't MAGA, people who voted because they've always voted for Republicans, and they are reachable. And it is an economic
exactly.
message. It is a message to say, you know, our kids and grandkids aren't coming home. You know what they've done to the schools here. I mean, Missouri is 50th in teacher pay and 49th in educational funding. My daughter, she goes to a tiny little rural school. In sixth grade, they handed her a textbook that was old enough to vote. I mean, they didn't even know that we had elected a black president. It had never heard of Hurricane Katrina. I mean, and
Goodness.
this was her her history book. So these people, when I knock doors, the daylight between what I want and what they want as Republicans is razor thin. There are two cultural wedge issues: abortion and guns. And here's the thing: I'm a rural person. I don't want your guns. I got my own, right?
Right, right.
I'm not coming for your guns. I have 5 kids and 4 grandkids. Well, you want to talk about someone who's pro-life? That's me, right?
Yeah,
And I remind these rural Democrats whenever I go out and speak to them. I just got back from Hannibal, Missouri, home of Mark Twain.
yeah,
There were over 200 rural Democrats who gathered together, and I remind them, you're the party, you're the pro-life party, because you believe in educating kids, feeding kids, making sure they have sidewalks to keep them safe,
yes.
libraries, police protection, fire protection. You're the pro-life party. And that just energizes these rural Democrats to go out and speak to their neighbors and to knock the doors and talk to their neighbors. And I'll say one more thing: we need candidates on every ballot. We need to make sure we're connecting and contesting every race. But people will say, well, we need, what kind of candidates do we need? What's the perfect candidate? There is no perfect candidate. It's
Right,
somebody from their hometown who understands their neighbors and can speak to their neighbors. And that's it. That's what you need.
right. Do you think, Jess, that especially for congressional races, that the Democrats have become perceived as an elitist kind of party or as more of a corporate kind of party? And that somehow the Republicans got associated as being the party of the working class. What happened there?
It is. And I think it's absolutely hilarious whenever people call us the elitists. And I'm like, friends, are you looking around at what your Republicans are doing? In Missouri, we're cutting taxes left and right. We are about to eliminate the income tax, which is 2/3 of our entire budget. They're eliminating the income tax. And when I talk to folks, they're like, oh, that's great. I'm not going to have to pay taxes. Friend, you weren't paying taxes in the first place. You're retired on a pension. You weren't paying income taxes. Now they're going to raise your sales tax to 20% and your groceries are already unaffordable. So it's going out and realizing that we have to connect these terrible policies that are meant for rich folks and say, that's your state legislator that is voting for them. You thought, he owns cattle or he has a farm and you thought he stood up for you. And then he went down to Jeff City and he unwound our entire system. Now your kids can't come home. They don't have a school to go to. And it's because they cut taxes for the wealthiest and they put you on the hook for everything else.
Oh, it's so true. But let me ask you this. Whenever the a Missouri voter is given an opportunity on a ballot to vote for progressive legislation, like Missouri voters, correct me if I'm wrong, have voted to raise the minimum wage. They
Yep.
have voted to expand abortion rights. They voted to
Yep.
expand Medicaid, right? Those are, progressive initiatives, right? In
Yeah.
Wisconsin, sadly, we don't have as voters the ability to do that, but in Missouri, you do. So if the voters are in your state are voting for these progressive things, why are they then turning around and voting for reactionary Republicans for government seats?
This is my favorite line. Missouri is not red. Missouri is uncontested. So
Yes.
when I ran for office in 22, 40% of the seats were uncontested. 40%. That means almost half of the people in this state couldn't make a choice if they wanted to. And that's why I'm saying when Democrats left, you can look at us in the 90s, in the 80s, in the early 2000s. We were the bellwether state. We,
Yes.
we were purple. We were I mean, so purple that every other state looked to us and said, okay, Missouri's going to decide how it goes. But because we pulled out, but because we said, oh, Missouri's only got 10 electoral college votes, who cares, right? This is what happens when you pull resources and you walk away. The Republicans found out something a long time ago. They found out you didn't have to commit a coup. They tried, didn't work, but you don't have to commit a coup to take over the country. You just got to take over half the states. And that's what they've done. And it's just mind blowing that us as Democrats, we haven't just said, oh my God. I mean, it's a simple solution. It's very hard. I mean, it takes a lot of work. Ask me how I know to claw back. But you got to be here and you've got to make a few points every single cycle. And then you got to do it again and again and again.
I love that line that you had there. Missouri is not red, it's uncontested,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Wisconsin, we're pretty much purple right now. We have a good
Yes.
chance of going progressive in the next election cycle, but it's always hanging on a thread, right?
Yep.
And th- you got to show up.
You have
Like
to
you
show
said.
up for people. Why would someone vote for a party when they don't know the party? The party's not on their ballot. And I say this all the time. Democrats have taught people in my community to vote for Republicans because they're not on the ballot. Who else would they vote for? They
Right,
don't even, I knock on doors and people would tell me they don't know a Democrat. Yes, you do, friend. Your neighbor's a Democrat, but they don't talk about it because they're scared. They don't put out a sign because they're scared. I mean, when I ran for office, my husband lost his job. We were both teachers. I was tenured. They couldn't come for him. They came for him, for me, so they came for him. People
wow,
lose their jobs, their livelihoods, their friends, their family, their churches. We're asking a lot. And then Democrats don't fund people in spaces like mine. And that's why I do what I do. Because how immoral is it to ask someone to put their name on the ballot and you don't fund them? You don't
right,
help them? What's wrong with you?
right. Yeah, that's why Blue Missouri is essentially your organization is essentially a crowdfunding site. Is that correct?
Yep. It is. It was started in 2017. My colleague Michelle Hornish started it because she looked around and was like, what has gone on? How was this man elected? How was Trump elected? And then she looked at what was going on in Missouri and she's like, we're not sending a cent to these people who putting their neck on the line for their communities. And so in her first couple years, it was, 20 grand for down ballot candidates and then 50. And last year we raised, or last cycle, 230,000 for down ballot Democrats. And I want to tell you this, Blue Missouri is the biggest donor to the Missouri Democratic Party. And we are funding the people that no one will fund because you can imagine how hard my job is. I'd like to raise some
Yeah.
money. Can you give me some money? I'm going to give it to a candidate who's going to lose.
Yeah.
Right? Write a check for someone who's going to lose, but it's important because that's the only way back.
I always tell my students, Jess, that if it was the early 1800s and you were asking people to get involved in abolition when
Yeah,
it looked like we were nowhere close to ending slavery, it might have seemed hopeless.
right,
But you got to have people in there for the long haul.
right.
And that's what you're telling people. And I think it's a powerful message. And I firmly believe, and you've seen this in your state, when you get people on the ballot, they might lose the first time, they might lose the second time, but the message starts to resonate. And the number of Republicans that get off the hook and never have to defend their record, I find that kind of obscene, don't you?
It makes me so mad. It makes me so mad. And one of the things, the impetus that really pushed me was in 2018 when that abortion ban went up. I opened up my local paper, and there was my representative who I knew saying that he was proud to vote for that. And I was just incensed. So I called him. He didn't call me back. I wrote him. I emailed him. I started posting about him. I never heard from this man. So I'm sitting at home one day, and my husband was sitting next to me, and I said, "Call Alan." And he said, "I don't want to." I said, "Call Alan because he won't respond to me." And Tony, 20 minutes later, my husband had a phone call from our representative who I'd been trying to get a hold of for weeks. And I said, "Tell him to hang up and call me." And he did. And I started in on him immediately because I was so angry. And he stopped me and he said, and I tell this story all the time. He told me two things I will never forget. Jess, I don't have to talk to you, and I'm calling you out of a favor to your husband. And that, I mean, I almost passed out. I was so mad. But I realized he's telling me the truth, isn't he? He doesn't have to talk to any voter because he's unopposed. He doesn't have to talk to anybody, not a Republican, not a Democrat, not an independent, because he goes
Right.
down to Jeff City and does the bidding of his donors because no one opposes him. So you're exactly right. I'm going to run against you, and you may kick my butt, but at least you didn't get to walk down there without a
That's
fight.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. And Americans are taught, we put down autocratic regimes across the world because people can't vote for candidates anywhere. And then
right,
we turn around and we have a huge percentage of uncontested seats.
right.
That's absolutely bizarre and ridiculous. And a part of this, of course, is media.
Hmm.
And one famous Missourian, for better or worse, is the late Rush Limbaugh.
Ugh.
And I know you wrote a column about him recently, talking about what you think Rush's impact might have been. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, just like you were saying, like what happened to Missouri? And you have to remember, even pre-Fox, there was Rush Limbaugh, who was a Missouri man, and he had a radio program that my grandparents listened to 3 hours a day. 3 hours every single day. And they would have it on their radio just in the house, and they were going about doing their business. But they heard the hate, the misogyny, the absolute, bigotry 3 hours a day, and it sort of permeated, not sort of, it did.
Yeah.
um it led them to be fearful of people they were never fearful of. My grandma worked in nursing homes with Somali immigrants every single day, and towards the end of her life she was scared of the people that she had worked with her entire life because she had internalized what Rush Limbaugh said. And there's an old saying, if you play a song long enough, soon enough you're humming along, right? It's
Yeah.
in the background. And then they went from Rush to Fox, and it was this easy transition. And they thought they were watching the news, Tony. I mean, there are so many people who will
Yeah.
say, "Well, I'm listening to the news." No, you're not. You're listening to an opinion program with terrible opinions, but they didn't recognize that. And now we've got people like my stepdad. Fox wasn't even hateful enough. He went down the OAN pipeline. He's watching 12 hours of YouTube every day as a 76-year-old man. Um, it's just created and they knew what they were doing. I mean, Fox knew exactly what they were doing. Reagan knew what he was doing when he took away the fairness doctrine. It was just it took so long for us to for them to do it that it sort of just became, oh, I don't even remember the fairness doctrine. I didn't remember the world before Fox. And my children, they've never known a world without Fox. They've
Right.
never known a world without airplanes flying into buildings, right?
Yeah.
So we're just in a completely different world.
We are. And this is why I think that what you're doing is so important because we need to have a kind of media ecosphere that challenges that. Because I mean, let's face it, as much as I prefer, say, MSNBC or MS Now to Fox or OAN, I don't think the corporate stations are ultimately the answer. I think it's got to be independent, grassroots, people doing the real work. I mean, I'll forward your columns to people just to demonstrate that there are people out there that are doing the work that needs to be done. We're not going to avoid it, Jess, right?
Right.
I mean, like you
And
said, if Democrats think they're going to win races just by narrow targeting people in suburbs or in urban areas, that's just not going to work, is it?
it's not going to work. And we can't just say, we're not Trump. You have to demonstrate what you are and how this will work for people. But there's a loss of local journalism, so people don't know what's going on.
Right.
And then they distrust journalism because they don't see their neighbors reporting on it. And so it's just talking to people and letting them know what Democrats do and what they've done. And my grandparents, my great grandparents, they were FDR Democrats because they looked at him and they went, "Oh, this is what good government looks like." They
Yes.
recognized that he pulled them out of a recession. And so now we have people like my congressman, Sam Graves, who's been in DC for 24 years. He hasn't had a town hall since 2012. I asked him to his face, "Are you going to have a town hall?" He said, "I don't have those." He said that to my face, right? Sam Graves has voted against every project for our roads and our hospitals for years. And every single time we open up a highway, he goes and cuts the ribbon. And I'm just like, friends, he voted against it. But who would report that he voted against the money that everyone's so excited to spend if we don't have local journalism? And that's
Right.
the problem. We have stepped away from reporting how these politicians vote and how that impacts their communities.
That is really criminal. So essentially, your congressman, again, gets away with misrepresenting his record, making it look like he supported something he didn't support, and it's just really insane. What do you as we head toward November of 2026, and you talk about what the Democrats' message should be, you're saying it shouldn't just be "we're not Trump." So which I agree with you 1000%. So in your judgment, what should be the elements of a winning Democratic message these days?
Simplicity. Keep it simple, right? We have to, and that's every time I go out and talk to people, they always say, or when people from the coast who are a big part of the people who read my Substack, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, you just said it so simply." And that's what we have to do. We have to just say, they can't scoop snow off your road because they're not funding it in Jefferson City. Your school has no textbooks because they defunded your schools in Jeff City. So we have to tell the people who is causing their pain and how we can fix it. Now, you can look at when I would knock doors and someone would say something about their road. I had one man from a little town called Burlington Junction knocked his door, talked about his road, and he said, "Well, Joe Biden." Oh, friend, Joe Biden doesn't know where Burlington Junction is, but Alan Andrews does. And he's the one who took the money away from your road, right? So it's a whole lot of deep canvassing. Missouri has been a GOP supermajority for 22 years. So when people anywhere in the state say, "Well, the Democrats, are they in the room with us?" What Democrats are you talking about? We have
Right.
not had a statewide elected Democrat since 2018, almost a decade. Who are you talking about? None of the pain you are feeling came from Democrats, friend. Not one bit of it. It all came from the Republicans who have been down there for 22 years. And that's the message that we have to bring to our neighbors.
Absolutely correct. And what about at the national level? I mean, do you think it's time for all Democrats to get behind things like, say, Medicare for all?
It is. And people, what we have let Republicans tell us what our message should be.
Yeah,
People will say, "You're too left." I'm telling you, I can knock a Republican's door right now. And if I said, "You could vote for Trump or Bernie," they'd be like, "Well, I don't know." Because they recognize that Bernie is a fighter and Bernie will get them the things they need. So when people say the Democratic Party has gone too far left, excuse me, they have not gone far enough left. We are Republican light. We are the Republicans from the 80s at this point. So you go out and tell people you deserve health care. Your kids deserve 5-day school weeks. Your kids
yeah.
deserve to go to college. These are things that your taxes are supposed to pay for, but instead they give them away to the rich people. And that's what our message should be. It should be swing left, swing for the fences, and swing left.
Again, Missouri's most famous politician, President Harry Truman,
Yeah.
after the Republicans took control in 1946, people were writing Harry Truman's epitaph, right? He's done, he's finished. And then he spent 2 years running against a do nothing Congress, right? The
Yep.
Congress that was only doing for the well-to-do, the elite, give him hell, right?
That was his thing. Give him hell, Harry.
And I seriously, and I mean, I think that that's what Democrats need to do. They need to get out there, take the positions that you're suggesting, demonstrate that the problems they have are being caused by people in office,
Yeah.
like in your state, who've had us. I looked at some numbers. In 1981 in Missouri, you had 117 Democrats in your state legislature and 46 Republicans. In 2026, it's almost exact opposite. 111 Republicans and 52 Democrats. That's a super majority, right?
It's a super majority.
And you have a Republican governor,
Yep.
right? You've got 24 Republicans in your Senate and 10 Democrats. So you're absolutely right. Anyone in your state who tries to blame anything on the Democrats, the Republicans
Like I
don't even have
said,
to talk to the Democrats, right?
no. And that's the thing too. When I was running for office, mathematically I couldn't win by voting on Democratic doors. There's, 13% of the
Yeah.
population. So I speak to Republicans all the time. My neighbors are Republicans. My neighbors voted for Trump. I'm going to tell you something. We had our cows get out not very long ago, two of them that were acting a fool, right? My neighbors put him up in his fence until we got home. He's a Republican, right? But at the end of the day, they're still in my community. We still care about each other. And that's the thing that we have to remember is I'm angry at MAGA voters. I am angry at people who have voted for these policies. But if I remember they're my neighbor and we really do want the same thing, then I'm able to speak to them. And what we have going right now is I think 28 or 2026 this year is going to be very bad for the Republicans. Very bad for the Republicans if we get to vote. But
Yeah.
a lot of people say, how can you get these people to vote for Democrats? I don't know that we can, but you know what they are willing to do? Stay home. Okay, a win is a win. If
Yeah.
you can't bring yourself to vote for this, then fine. But that's we have to get the message across to them. And they have to understand that Democrats are their neighbors and we want what's best for them.
Jess, another thing I really admire and appreciate about what you're doing, you will talk to anybody.
Yes.
And I get so frustrated when I go to help out with canvassing and I'm handed a list of these are the places you need to go to, right? Everyone's got all the data now, right?
Yes.
This one always votes Democrat. This one always votes Republican. Don't go to that one. And I'm sitting there thinking, maybe it's because of my background as a communication professor. If I just keep the door shut and say there are some people I'm never going to talk to, even if they're literally my neighbors,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the formula for maybe short-term win, but not long-term.
And that's what I was when I would knock doors and people would say, I don't know any Democrats. Here I
Yeah,
am.
here I
And
am.
I taught your son English. You remember, right? I had your kid, I had your niece in my class. We go to the same ball games. We see each other at Walmart all the time. These are the things that, and like I said, if I see a MAGA flag, there's no sense in me stopping. But all those other ones, there is sense in me
Yeah,
stopping. There is
yeah.
sense in that. And you know what? I knocked a lot of doors. We have the list, and you're supposed to stay on the list. I got off the list one time. It wasn't a good experience. But I ended up at a woman's store who wasn't registered to vote, and she said there's no sense in it. There's no sense in voting because they do what they want. And that is exactly why we have to do that. Because you know what? They do what they want. She's not
Yeah.
telling me a lie. We told them abortion is legal. We passed a constitutional amendment saying women have the right to their own bodies. Guess what, Tony? A year and 5 months later, you cannot access an abortion in this state because they do what they want, which it creates apathy among voters. Why would I even vote if they don't listen to me? And that's why we have to get out and talk to them.
Jess, this has been so amazing. And again, when we talk about family values and somehow we let the Republicans become the party of family values, and here you are, you're a mother of five,
Yeah.
you have three grandchildren. I know at least one of your sons is in the military.
Yep.
You and your husband, school teachers. What more family value can we imagine?
I know. And the only thing that gets people about me is, I vote for Democrats. And that's why we have to be in our community saying we are just like you. We just want the best for our communities. And the best way right now is to vote for Democrats.
Well, another thing that I suspect you believe, and I'll close on this, but I want to get what you think about this. I think lots of people who support Democrats think that if we get them into office, our job is over. Now we put them in there. But I'm sure you would agree with me that if we're able to get more Democrats in office, and in my state of Wisconsin, there's a real shot to get majorities, that's when the job starts, correct?
It is. And I mean, you can look at places like New York City where it's all elected Democrats. Then you have to hold them accountable. So,
Yes.
and it never stops. Our job never stops, but it wasn't supposed to. We weren't supposed to look away from politics like we have done. We weren't supposed to be lulled to sleep because our party is in power. We were supposed to still show up every single day and get the things we need for everyone to be happy, healthy, and educated. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want.
All right. Well, let me just close off by asking you. So, your Substack is called The View from Rural Missouri. I am a subscriber. I absolutely love your Substack, but people can get a free version of it too. Is that right?
Yeah, it's there's no paywall for anybody. The View from Rural Missouri, and you can follow me on all of the socials except Twitter. I am not on that hellscape, but I'm everywhere else, usually as Piper for Missouri.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for doing this. And I hope maybe you can come back again, maybe after the November elections. Maybe we can do a recap of what happened.
That would be fantastic. Thanks for having me, Tony.
All right. Thanks so much, Jess. Appreciate you very much.